And I want to start off today with two shortstops who I think the perception nationally would probably be that one guy is much better than the other because he's been a little more established. He already got the big contract, and I'm talking about Bobby Witt Jr., who is the clear face of the franchise for the Royals. But here's Gunnar Henderson. And if I ask you right now, Patrick, who's better, Bobby Witt Jr. or Gunnar Henderson, and you actually take a minute to look at the numbers, I think we start to realize that this is a really good conversation between two young stud shortstops.
It's so exciting that these two guys are going to be playing against each other for 10 plus years, and both in the American League. So they'll see each other a little bit more frequently if they were in different leagues. But yeah, you're right. I think the edge in many ways to many people has to go with Bobby Witt Jr. Has that bigger pedigree. As soon as he was drafted, he was a part of that conversation as one of the top prospects. Gunnar Henderson, of course, a second round pick for the Orioles. So kind of overshadowed even within his own organization, where Bobby Witt Jr. was almost immediately, once he was selected, was the guy for the future for that organization. And it's kind of interesting too that, Henderson did win the Rookie of the Year, whereas Witt was not able to do that. But last year in the American League MVP award voting, Witt Jr. 7th, Gunnar Henderson 8th, right next to each other. So this is going to be a conversation. This is how we're going to pay the bills, I think, for the next decade. The Who's Better Baseball pod. Are they talking about Witt and Henderson again? Yeah, we are, because frankly, it's a great conversation.
It's just crazy to see the comparison of the numbers because, I had the thought, I'm like, all right, let me see how close these guys are. Going into today, WRC plus, you have Bobby Witt 168, Gunnar Henderson 169. F4, you have Gunnar at 1.5, Bobby Witt 1.6. So they're playing each other to about a dead heat right now. You see a little more power from Gunnar. He's got 7 home runs. Witt's got 4. Gunnar has driven in more runs. Bobby Witt has scored more runs. They're both solid defensively. It's kind of just pick your flavor, which one you like more. But I think to shine some light on Gunnar Henderson, again, he doesn't get that same recognition. He's kind of overshadowed by Adley Rutschman. Even Jackson Holliday is this uber prospect that everyone was saying, oh, he might be the shortstop of the Orioles. No, I think Gunnar's going to hold on to short. Jackson is already playing second base, and I think that'll continue because Gunnar's been so good defensively at shortstop. And these are also guys who started off getting some time at third base and have kind of grabbed that keystone position as well.
Yeah, that's been a big part of Gunnar Henderson's value, whether you're looking at Fangraphs or baseball reference. They're how a B-WAR is calculated. That's actually a big edge. So despite the fact that, Bobby Witt Jr. played a full year there in 2022, whereas Henderson just debuted, he's got an extra 100 plus games, Witt Jr. does, but yet, if you're looking at wins above replacement, Henderson has actually been the better player overall. Looking at a lot of the rate stats as well, offensively lean heavily towards Gunnar Henderson here in the early going. So you're right. I think the conversation is a lot closer than a lot of people would think. And Witt Jr., sure, he's got a veteran guy like Salvador Perez, who we'll talk about here in just a little bit, as someone that is certainly not in his shadow, but look, he's got a big brother that's going to guide him through the way. Whereas Gunnar Henderson, he's one of several young brothers right there with, as you mentioned, Jackson Holliday, Adley Rutschman, Grayson Rodriguez, so many of those young Orioles players. So they're kind of sharing the spotlight with one another, whereas Witt Jr. is the cornerstone of the Royals franchise right now. But when you look at the numbers, you're right. I think it does favor Henderson in a lot of ways.
It's pretty nuts because I think Bobby Witt was kind of a sneaky MVP pick going into the year, and Gunnar was not getting any of that love. But again, like you said, the numbers have been there for Gunnar Henderson, and I think maybe this will be the year. Maybe it'll take a couple years, but at some point, we might be talking about Gunnar Henderson being the face of the Orioles, not Adley Rutschman, not Jackson Holliday. It just might be him. I think the one separator that might give Gunnar the edge long term is we're seeing it early right now, but can he tap into more game power? And it might just be by virtue of the ballparks they play in. They both maybe play more like a pitcher friendly park, but Kauffman is just brutal on hitters to drive home runs out. Gunnar gets to play in the AL East. A lot of those stadiums in the Central also play big. So I wonder if that will even just give Gunnar an eventual edge because the numbers might just look a little more gaudy.
Yeah, that's such a fair point with the ballpark, obviously favoring Henderson. Left-handed hitter, so he doesn't have to deal with that just expanse of grass out in left field that they've created, the kind of the anti-green monster, if you will. It's just so far away. Instead, he's got the short porch and right, shorter porch. But you're right, he's got Yankee Stadium. And also, look who's around Henderson, as we just kind of established. Much better lineup protection. You know, Royals have a solid lineup right now, and they're playing well in general. But there are more of those guys around Henderson, more of those guys in front of Henderson in the order, even the bottom of that lineup too. That Orioles, run out there 1 through 9 each and every game. That gives them more opportunity for those RBI. So, Henderson, edge to him as far as he's got a silver slugger on his resume already. Witt Jr., he's got those stolen bases, and he's got the contract right now. But that's going to make one guy a little bit more hungry than the other. It's so exciting to be in the middle of this, to see them go back and forth, especially because they play the same position.
And, when we look at long-term, one of the interesting things to me is Gunnar Henderson is a Boris client. So you just wonder, is he going to be in the free agent class of 2029, this huge big ticket option? I mean, I wonder how old he'd be. I guess he'd be 30 years old by then, maybe even younger than that, maybe 20, 28. So it's going to be fun to watch their careers. Like I said at the beginning, Bobby Witt, because he has a contract, because he's the guy, I think when most of the people might be tuning into this show or the video later, just see the topic, they'd say, oh yeah, it's Bobby Witt Jr. But Gunnar Henderson deserves that respect. Who would you give the edge to right now? Are you going Gunnar, or are you going Bobby Witt if you had to pick a shortstop for the next 10 years?
Wow. If I was going the next 10 years, I think at this point I probably would go Gunnar Henderson, but I prefer Bobby Witt Jr. right now. I enjoy his speed. I enjoy the electricity with which he plays the game again, having that pedigree, knowing what it means to go through those, serious slumps. He's just a little bit more fun to watch in a place like Kansas City, where, they love their baseball, and he's a bit more of a rarity than with Henderson, again, kind of distracted a little bit by the other guys that are in that lineup and on that roster. So I would take Witt Jr. right now, but if you're asking me the next 10 years, man, that left-handed swing from a shortstop like Gunnar Henderson, that's a rarity right now. So yeah, I'd lean towards him. Are you going Henderson too? Are we making this a 2-0 sweep for Gunnar?
I think it's such a tough one. I mean, I think of all the things we've debated on this show up to this point, this one might be the closest one, where, especially just looking at what they've done at this point in their careers, it is very, very similar. I think I would probably lean Witt, but not by much. I think Gunnar has really kind of changed, my perception of what he's going to be with the way he performed in the second half, how he's gotten off, such a great start. And it helps too that he's on. I think that the thing that I'm trying to separate in my mind is putting these players in a vacuum, because I think Gunnar's in just such a perfect situation where I feel like the numbers might just be better, particularly over the next 5 years, however long he's in an Orioles uniform. Whereas with Bobby Witt, would Gunnar Henderson be as good if he was on the Kansas City Royals? Is maybe the point where I say I think Bobby Witt might be just a little bit better, but man, it's close.
It is. And even if you try to shift things a little bit and say, well, let's look at their age 22 season for Henderson, that was last year after he did get a little bit of a taste in the majors in 2022. Whereas with Junior, 22-year-old, that's his rookie season. That's him coming up in 2022. So those numbers skew heavily towards Gunnar Henderson there. So it's just interesting how their ages have been so close together. But Henderson, doing it a little bit earlier, and in many ways with a lot less pressure too.
Yeah, for Witt, like you're saying there, it was kind of just a rough first year, and then it was last year that it broke out. For Henderson, it was kind of a rough first half, and then he came strong in the second half. So yeah, he adapted to that learning curve a little bit quicker.
Henderson walked, or rather, Bobby Witt Jr. walked so that Gunnar Henderson could run, right? Because he laid the groundwork. Hey, play some third base. We got a good defensive shortstop, and then we'll slide over. So the Royals kind of patented that move. Orioles followed suit. Witt Jr., Gunnar Henderson. This probably won't be the last time we talk about those guys in 2024.
No, not at all. I think when you look at I actually got to kind of check here. A quick Google search here. Top 10 shortstops in baseball. Hopefully just baseball's list comes up pretty high. Let's see where we had them ranked to kind of close this out, because I know they were both on our list. I know that Bobby Witt was higher up, but I think Gunnar was pretty high up there, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, we had Gunnar at 6, and then we had Bobby Witt at 4 with Bo Bichette in the middle. I think the funny thing about it is now I would not take Bo Bichette over Gunnar Henderson. So he's already leapfrogged one guy on this list, probably into the top 5 shortstops in baseball, and who knows where he'll end up by the end of this season.
Yeah, if Who's Better Baseball doesn't work out, we can do Let's Rank them, and just every week just rank the top whatever position players. Not a bad idea.
People love top 10 lists, so it could be a pivot point for us.